Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for ADramofOutlander.com for all things Outlander, from the Diana Gabaldon book series to the Stars TV series and everything in between. This is episode 92, A Fugitive Green, week 2, chapters 4 through 6. Well, hello again. I am excited to be here with you this week. I am loving this novella. And there's been much news coming out of Outlander Stars this week. We saw a new clip of Claire going to the stone with Jamie on the other side. First peek at David Barry as Lord John Grey and Jamie in shackles or manacles. We saw a picture of Sophie Skelton and a young actress named Gemma who's playing her at a younger age, because there was a photo released of the young Bree, and there was Joe Abernathy and Claire and Frank. So follow Lynette Rice on Twitter and Entertainment Weekly. She seems to have most of the material that's coming out new. And follow Dram of Outlander on Twitter, because I capture all the things as they come out and post them. And go on to the A Dram of Outlander page on Facebook and join the A Dram of Outlander group. I have started a bunch of discussion areas on the group, and people are starting to join. And that way, in the event areas, you are able to go in and talk about the books unfettered without worrying about spoiling it for somebody who hasn't read them yet. Yes, I know I've said in the past over and over, you can't spoil books that have been out for 2.5 decades. Well, at least the first few. But there are people who are waiting to read the books until after the series ends, or they're only reading the books up to where the series is at. And some are just not going to read the books at all. So that's our way of having discussions without any worry whatsoever. And also follow Dram of Outlander on Instagram, because I post photos almost every day. So the really big news this week is that the premiere date has been set. It is September 10th, 2017, Sunday night on Stars. It's so exciting. So leading up till that, we should be getting more clips and behind the scene photos and interviews. And the San Diego Comic-Con is coming up in a week, and there will be panels, and they are supposed to be broadcast. So even if it's not live, we should be able to watch the video later. And I will post things as quickly as I can on the different social media sites, and we will also discuss it here on the podcast, maybe on a special podcast of its own, so it doesn't interfere with the read-along series. But as we lead up to the premiere date after we finish A Fugitive Green, since it will only take us about 6 weeks, I will be going through and highlighting the various points that I think are the most important, what we can watch for in the series, etc. And some things that I think that might be different based on what I've read or heard. Okay, let's dive right into chapter 4, Regimental Business. So Hal and Harry are going to meet with Donald Grierson, and they are dressed to impress in their semi-dress uniforms. And as they're going up to the house, Hal notices a tree and breaks a branch off. And it happens to be a tree called a Cockspur hawthorn tree. And of course I have to look this up, because it's what I do. I will post links and information on all the things that I researched into the show notes, into that blog post for you to read, so you can go and get some more information. It is supposed to be a tree that has varying healing elements, and it's supposed to have certain scents and tastes. So some basic background on an English hawthorn. It can get about 20 to 25 feet tall. The fruit is edible, though the seeds, varying places say they could be poisonous, so don't do that. But the fruit can be made into jams and compotes and is rather useful. And Hal says that the leaves are supposed to be edible and the scent of the flowers is pleasing. Well, it's supposed to be the scent of an aroused woman. I don't know how any plant could smell that way. All it says in my research is that it is a pleasing scent, not that it's an arousing scent. So, I don't know. Any of you in England, please go and smell the flowers of a hawthorn tree for me and let me know what they smell like. I'm in Colorado. I can't quite do that so readily. And they can also be used medicinally. So it is a long-standing tree in England, and there are various types in North America as well. But I will post many links for you to click on and do additional reading for yourself. So Hal says that the leaves are supposed to taste like bread and cheese. I did not find that in my research, but hey, it sounds really fascinating. And when he smells the flowers, it distracts him. It's like a musk, and he wonders how something could smell slippery. And a servant caught Hal in this thoughtful state. Hal had never met Major Grierson, but this man had an excellent reputation. He heartily greeted Hal. He introduces his wife Pansy to him, and the fact that she has a floral name is interesting. There's also a current botanist named Donald Grierson. So I don't know if that had anything to do with why Diana named Major Grierson Donald Grierson or not. And all of a sudden, Harry makes a growling sound behind Hal's back, and it's none other than Reginald Twelvetrees in the room. This could not be worse for Hal. I mean, he's still in terrible shape. He's grieving. He's almost fainting. He's not eating or sleeping very well. He has all this guilt. He's still suffering from his father committing suicide. His brother has been sent away. He's lost his wife and maybe his baby, her baby, we don't know. And killed Nathaniel Twelvetrees in a duel. So Reginald Twelvetrees is obviously here to undermine Hal. And it's awkward. Grierson doesn't know of the history between them. Turns out that Grierson is without a regiment right now. He had fallen ill and had been sent home to England when there was a mutiny not a month later, leaving much of the regiment courts-martialed and then disbanded. His commission vaporized with it. Normally a man would purchase another commission with another regiment, but he seemed to be a hot commodity right now, and he knew it. Hal wanted him, and whether or not Reginald needed him, he didn't want Hal to have him. Hal needed his connections. It could bring more high-profile men to the regiment he is trying to resurrect. And they kind of go through all the nuts and bolts of things, how many troops Hal has, and all that bluster. And then suddenly, Hal has a whiff of the Cockspur, and he has a flashback to the morning of the duel. He feels the cold pistol in his hand and squeezing it. He remembers ferociously betting Esme before he left, and it seemed like she really wanted him as well, but maybe she was thinking it was Nathaniel in bed with her instead. He remembered looking into Nathaniel's eyes and the bang of the gun. Hal sounds like he has a bit of PTSD. And at this point, he passed out. He was roused by the other men, and he refused not to walk out of Winstead Terrace on his own. There was a taste of brandy in his mouth after it was forced down his throat by Grierson, and he's in a terrible mind and body right now. He stumbled his way out with Harry, and he found a place away from the cockspur tree to sit. And Hal says he's never passed out, not even when he was told of his father. And this is while he and Harry were all dressed up, looking foolish, sitting on the pavement. But at the moment, he didn't care. Then he recalled maybe passing out at tea the week prior with Harry. Harry said he was only queasy after 24 sardines with mustard on an empty stomach. Hal moves to steady himself, and he gets up. He had to say it if it all falls apart, meaning he gets charged criminally, if he can't get the regiment together, all those things. And they were both thinking it. Harry said they would just start again. He's such a good pal. I mean, he's the best wingman I can think of in these books, next to Murtaugh and Jamie. And at that, they go for a drink. I think they both needed one. It was a terrible interview. Poor Hal. He's in such bad shape. He's desperate and broken. Doesn't it make your heart just weep for him and all he's gone through? He's maybe 24 years old? It's much to handle. So he's doing all he can to protect the regiment that his dad had started, and to get his family name back in order, and to clear his name somehow without revealing the letters. And his sense of brokenness and desperation is such a polar opposite to what Minnie is being. Upright, self-assured, determined, head-on, getting things done. And she's barely quaking over any of it. Yin and yang? What do you think? Let me know. Email. Go on social media pages, call into the listener line, and leave me a message. Chapter 5, Strategy and Tactics. So, Minnie is at a tea with Lady Buford, and this is when she realizes the great treachery of her father. Lady Buford is basically a marriage broker. Her father put up a dowry of £5,000. It is a substantial sum. And she thinks this is what he meant by establishing a social life. Lady Buford has excellent connections and is going through the types of available men. And Minnie's thinking her father is a genius and was impressed by what he had set up. And she didn't think he meant for her to marry an Englishman now, even though he had brought it up. So he gave her a clue, and it winged right past her, and she didn't hear it. She just goes along with the conversation and eventually asks about members of the peerage. Peerage is somebody titled nobility. It's traceable. Lady Buford thinks it would be a sinkhole of money and a sinkhole of life, since many are impoverished. She would need her own income if she wanted a good lifestyle. She didn't have enough of a dowry to marry into a higher title that would come with money of its own. And Minnie lies and says she has her own income to the tune of £1,000 per year, where of course her little jobs on her own pay maybe 1/10 of that. But she didn't marry. She didn't plan on marrying any of the men anyhow, so what did it matter? She needed the social contacts for her own business and purposes. Lady Buford goes about setting up a visit to Lady Jonas's and a play on Saturday. Minnie has never been to a play. She asks what's appropriate to wear. Worldly, but not in etiquette or social skills. So she knows how to read people. She knows how to work people. She knows how to get information. She knows how to basically be a spy and an informant. But what she lacks is some of that internal etiquette of society, which she is being thrust into. And her father wants her to marry into this, probably to give her a better life than if she's doing this forever, right? And so in the end, Lady Buford gives her a list of clothing items and a host of engagements that she would attend. And these were necessary in the pursuit and bagging of a wealthy husband. Minnie's head was spinning. And again, we see the class system, the formality, the rules, the game of it all. It's like a giant game of chess almost, or a puzzle that you have to work on until you get to the end. And as she's thinking about this list, and she's outside now, she mutters to herself how a gun would be simpler. And Mick O'Higgins wants to know what kind of gun. I love the O'Higginses. They're always right there for her. She doesn't really want a gun. She says she needs to go to a milliner's, which is a person who makes or sells women's hats. We should do a vocabulary quiz at the end of the podcast. From here, we fast forward a week, and she's in awe of her appointment book. It was beautiful with a chocolate leather cover made in Florence with the Chinese symbol for happiness on it. Her father called it a chu, which is a lotus flower. He gifted it to her on her 17th birthday. And he gave her another rough-cut notebook before she left, and it's something like an artist would sketch in. She did use it to sketch and coded appointments that couldn't be spoken aloud. I love the layout of the sketchbook, and I'm going to read from the chapter. The first few pages were decoys. The first aide-memoire was on the 5th page, the appointment being for the 5th of the month. A sketch of trees overhanging a path with the legend Vauxhall Gardens underneath. There were footprints on the path leading the way into the shadows, 3 of them clearly marked, and half of another. 3:30 in Vauxhall Gardens on the 3rd of June. On the facing page, a sketch of a wrapped parcel like a birthday present to be received. So that explains how her special rough-cut appointment book is set up. And it's funny because the other appointment book, Diana calls chuppointment book. Chuppointment? At first, I couldn't figure out what the heck she meant. And then it dawns on me. Chew appointment book. Silly, silly. Took me a few minutes to get it through my head. And she reflects on how she's already been very busy with her book appointments, buying and selling, and she had done 8 thus far. And how she'd never seen a real chew flower like the one on the cover of her appointment book. Maybe she would come across a botanist in London. She wanted to know what it smelled like. Like I said earlier, it is a lotus. It's fascinating how there's so much to do with flowers, trees, again, nature. It's just everywhere in this book. Not only for her, but for Hal as well. And if any of you know exactly what that means in a literary sense, pipe up and let me know. In the back of her book, she has a letter. She rewrote it several times. It was from Mrs. Simpson. And now she trusted the O'Higginses enough to deliver it for her the next day. They would only ask a few questions, or maybe a lot, but they were delivering many things for her and picking it up so it wouldn't seem strange. Next we see her itinerary of appointments. This lady is well booked. And I love how in the page it says, from the Chew Diary. Now I'm going to go through here because there are several notable things within this itinerary. At least I found them notable and worthy of looking up and sharing with you. Because when we read through this on our own, we have no reason to sit here and wonder what all this is because we're looking for the rest of the story. But you know how I am, and I love to dig and research. So, in her appointments for Monday, June 1st, there are a couple of books that I found important. Philologus Hebraeus. Okay, so this particular book is it's considered an exceedingly important, comprehensive study of Judaism and Jewish life, including Kabbalah, by one of the greatest Hebraeus, Johannes Lusden. And I'm sitting here looking on a book site to buy it used. It's $3,200. And this book came out in 1657. It was an 8-volume. That is amazing. Again, I will post in the show notes, in that posting, all the links so you can go and research these on your own. I've done the work for you. You just have to click on it and read. But that's why you listen to me, right? Because I'll do this for you and make it simpler. The next book of note is Histoire de la guerre des Juifs contre les Romains. Okay. It's a war with the Romans. Okay. And this book is en français, as you can tell. And it was written in, what was the original date? Eek. It says in here 1676, but 1688 may have been the original. Yes, I'm sorry. This book came out originally in 1668. Whew. Amazing. That's wild. So there are various copies out there between the 1660s and 1676. And the following book of interest is De Sacrificis Libri Duo Quorum Altero Explicantur Omnia Judarum. Okay, there you go. Terrible Latin. What it means is 2 dissertations on sacrifices. The first on all the sacrifices of the Jews by William Outram Reed. And this book originally came out in 1677. So these are some old books. And I'm reading some of these from Wikipedia because they've been substantiated, but I'm also not writing a scholarly article at the moment, or I would find those links as well for you. The next book that's real is Muhammad the Imposter, A Tragedy. And this one is from 1760. What do you think of that? From Wednesday, June 3rd, the factoid of interest is Vauxhall Gardens. And it is quite a beautiful place from looking at the photograph. It didn't actually become Vauxhall Gardens until 1785, but entertainment was done there publicly, and it was originally known as the New Spring Gardens. It was restored in 1660, and it was used for public entertainment from the mid-17th century to the mid-19th century. There you go. I love how Diana culls from real things. When I look at the books, I mean, are they sitting on her shelf, all of them? Does she just look up at books or notate them when she's reading for something of interest that might work for a future character? I don't know. That might be a really good question. Because looking at these, they look like books of importance, but it's nothing I've ever heard of before. So there's a few other things of note in her calendar book. The next one is her going to the promenade at Hyde Park. It is still there. And I love how it's Victorian London, entertainment and recreation, Hyde Park. So this area has been in use for hundreds of years. And this is where Jamie went into the Hyde Park when John went after him that day, looking for him. And Tobias Quinn had come across him. But Hyde Park is 395 acres, and there's a whole bunch of detail in here. It's near Kensington Gardens, and it's amazing what is available to us online to find out what a time that we live in, that I can just click on some keys and come up with all kinds of fascinating information. She was also set to meet someone named the Duke of Beaufort. The House of Beaufort is very old. The Duke of Beaufort is a title in the Peerage of England, and it was created by Charles II in 1682 for Henry Somerset, 3rd Marquess of Worcester. A descendant of Charles Somerset I, Earl of Worcester, legitimized son of Henry Beaufort, 3rd Duke of Somerset, a Lancastrian leader in the War of the Roses. Is this sounding familiar now? Okay. And this is a house that is still alive today. And the seat that they have is Badminton House. It's amazing to me that this is all still going on today. It's fascinating. And on Saturday, June 6th, she's getting work of her own. She even investigated the character of a young man for a father whose daughter was looking to marry. She knew this guy was no good, but she needed to wait to tell the father to justify the bill she would send him. And the next two places that I will be linking to is St. George's, Hanover Square, and St. Clement's. There's some wonderful photographs and history for both of these. St. George's was built between 1721 and 1724. It was one of the 50 churches projected by Queen Anne's Act of 1711. It still has services today, and it is astonishing. So click on the links. You will absolutely love it. So Minnie has been terrifically busy. I mean, it's amazing to me what this young woman can get done. And then I remember she doesn't have television, a phone, a car, Facebook, or any other social media. She's not sitting there Snapchatting everything she's doing. So I guess when you're trying to fill your day and you don't have all these other distractions, you can get a whole lot done. So we're really seeing how orderly she is, how important this stuff is to her. She's not only doing the social things that are listed in here that she needs to catch a husband. She's using it for social connections. But she's doing the work part as well. And she's met many men in here. A viscount, a sir. Aren't sirs knights? She's having lunches and teas, and she also met the Honorable Horace Walpole. So she's doing all of these things that she's supposed to be doing while she's working. Her calendar is crazy. Like, she has like 5 things on every single day or more. And she's getting new clothing made. Maybe we wouldn't dislike our imperfections if we had clothing made specifically for us and had it hand tailored. If it fit us beautifully, I think we would feel beautiful no matter what our flaws. And there's other notes in here that are worth going back and reading, but I wasn't going to read them to you. Chapter 6, Unexpected Introductions. So now we're on Monday, June 8th. So we've chronicled all these different places she's gone. Oh, one of the things I forgot to say for her Friday when she was having a meeting, one of the vocab words that came up was emmerduces, which means pain in the neck. It was a couple of daughters. Some young women that were driving her crazy. Okay. So we open to Minnie being an absolute nervous wreck. Her hair is pinned so tightly her eyebrows are arched, like she's had too tight of a facelift. This is the day she is to meet her mother, whom she believes is Mrs. Simpson. The note that she had received back only said, "Do you think this is wise?" Minnie is sure it is not wise, but she's doing it anyway. Girl has spunk. There is a knock at the door and it startles her. It's a full quarter hour before Mrs. Simpson is set to arrive. Eliza, whom I think is a housemaid, went to answer the door. Minnie looks at herself in the mirror and thinks she looks wild, and she tries to straighten herself quickly. She certainly does not act like a 17-year-old young woman. Turns out it's not Mrs. Simpson. It's Colonel Quarry, Hal's friend, Harry. And she thinks he's handsome in a sort of way. He's dark and dashing. He greets her and asks what her age is. And she says 19, lying, adding 2 years. And then she asks him what his age is, and he says, why? 21. She tells him she has an interest in numerology. So, of course, I have to look up the numerology because I don't know a darn thing about it. So, numerology is any belief in the divine, mystical relationship between a number and one or more coinciding events. It is also the study of the numerical value of the letters and words, names, and ideas. It is often associated with the paranormal alongside astrology and similar divinatory arts. Despite the long history of numerological ideas, the word numerology is not recorded in English before 1907. So she does have an interest in numerology, and she asks Harry all the pertinent questions, and she figures out that he's a 4. And if I look it up, and it says, those who walk a life path with number 4 have an unbreakable spirit and astounding capabilities of self-control. I don't think Harry Quarry has that. 4 reminds us that equality for all size creates the strongest structures. Its energy is that of stability. Well, Harry is very stable. He's loyal to a fault. And he's supposed to be highly successful, self-disciplined, a worker. And work is a joy for somebody who's a 4. Seeing things complete makes a 4 happy. And she thinks that 4s also are not quick thinkers, but they are loyal. And I looked it up for myself and put in the numbers, and I happen to be a 5, which made me laugh because Minnie thinks it's pretty accurate when you look at the numbers. Those who walk a life path with number 5 have an uncanny ability to understand the deepest esoteric and metaphysical teachings. 5 turns the mystical into the norm. Its energy is that of experience. It says that 5s are highly sensual people. Consider our body has 5 senses and 5 fingers. The greatest caution for a 5 is avoiding being too indulgent. That we have flair and we're quick learners. We're highly motivational and many times visionaries, and even have a knack for telepathy. I wonder what some of you are. It's always fun to peek into these other areas, especially when Diana brings them up, because why does she bring them up? And at this point, Minnie notices that the clock is ticking and she's getting nervous because Mrs. Simpson is supposed to be there at 2:00. So she finds out that Harry's there to actually employ her. He says the matter he comes to her with needs discretion, and he goes over the basics, a friend whose wife just died in childbed, and also that his friend's wife had been having an affair with a friend of his for some months prior. And then Minnie says, "Oh dear, and forgive me, was the child my friend? It doesn't know." So Harry explains there are further difficulties, and that's why he wants to engage her to find proof of that affair. And this is confusing to her because she says, "Your friend, he isn't sure that she was having an affair?" No, he's positive there were letters. And he says he can't explain now, and that his friend refuses to use those letters no matter what to show proof. And if he cannot find proof of the affair elsewhere, it could be disastrous for him. So she first wonders if there really is a friend, or if it's Harry. He's talking about himself, and he must have heard her thinking, and he peers directly into her eyes, answering her questions. No, he's not a married man. No, he's not grieving. So she asks him for the basic instructions for the case, and he gives the names of Esme Grey, Countess Melton. So Minnie can get acquainted with those in Esme's prior circles. And then she asks for the man's name, and Nathaniel Twelvetrees. He's a poet. He's not a soldier, too. She says she'll take the job, but can't guarantee results. And she has a prior engagement at 2. So let her think about it. She'll put together her ideas and get back to him. But she'll do the job. And as he's leaving, she asks if she can approach Twelvetrees. "Afraid not, Miss Rennie. My friend shot him. I'll send the list," he promised, and with a deep bow left her. There was another knock as soon as Harry Quarry left, and she hears men's voices. And it's kind of a kerfuffle going on, and turns out these men were sent by Mrs. Simpson to pick her up. Now, there should be some stranger danger here, and she does have it going on, but she still follows them. There was a coach outside, and she gets in with her heart pounding. What if they were kidnapping her, gonna rape her? I love the turn of phrase here. Incautious persons to what she is doing. She was being an incautious person for sure. But she did have a small dagger upon her person, and she would use it if needed. There were 2 men, an older and the younger, and the older man handed her a flask. It had orange flower water with herbs, gin, and she thanks him and thinks, great, drugged and raped, as if her father would ever live it down, ever let her live it down. There was no odor to it, and the men were congenial enough. As they drove along, they were quiet, and she just observed them. And she flipped through the ledger in her head of her father's enemies and contacts, and these men did not fit any description that she had known in the past. And when they finally stopped, it was at a small inn, and there were businesses all surrounding an establishment called Kettrick's Eel Pie House. And this fictional eel house is also in Lord John and the Private Matter. So Diana has used it before. All her things seem to come back around to each other. They all fit together. I cannot imagine what the inside of her brain sounds like. Once Minnie is inside, she sees a woman in a blue dress with brown hair and pale green eyes. They're not her eyes. They're not blue like her own. This woman didn't look anything like the picture Minnie had carried her whole life, and she was disappointed. The woman greets her by using her real name, Minerva. And this is Mrs. Simpson, and she tells Minnie she is not her mother. And Minnie wants to know who the bloody hell she is. Turns out she's her Aunt Miriam Simpson, Her mother, Helene's sister. Helene. French, she thinks. Yes, her mother is alive, and her aunt is painstakingly telling her things, and she wishes she had a gun so she could shoot a bullet into the ceiling to get her moving. She asks her aunt to take her to her mother now and to tell her the story of what happened on the way. And that closes out chapter 6. Gosh, I say it over and over, but Minnie is so much older than her age. She seems like she's closer to 30 than 20, and definitely not 17 years old. Unconventional upbringing, loss of a mother, a father in an interesting line of work. Minnie will always be able to take care of herself, that's for sure. What do you think of Harry Quarry coming to Hal's aid and going behind his back as his best friend to see if he can get the information? Now remember, somebody hired Minnie to get information on Hal. She hasn't met with that person yet, but Hal's a mark. So she's going to be working both sides here. It'll be interesting to see what she does. Please let me know what you think. Give me your comments, questions, and thoughts. You can call into the listener line at 719-425-9444, and you can have your questions or thoughts put into the podcast. Email me at contact@adramaofoutlander.com, or you may post in the Facebook group, A Drama of Outlander, the Facebook page, A Drama of Outlander, on Twitter, Dram of Outlander, no A. And you can always go to the website and send me an email through that. And it's adramaofoutlander.com. I know, so hard to remember. And how do you support the podcast? Interact with each other. Join the social media places. Come on in. Have conversations. Help build a community even bigger than it is now. This is all about interaction. All these books that Diana Gabaldon has written, it has created something beautiful in its own kind of world for all of us to wander around in. And I've gained some valuable friendships through it. You can also support the podcast by sharing the links to the show, going into iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play and leaving a review, because that will help people find me. Send people to join on the social media pages. That's how you support it. You help it grow. And I'm always looking for people to come on and co-host with me or spend a segment. So if that's something you'd like to do, shoot me an email or leave me a voicemail. And you can also support the podcast financially. You can do a monthly offering through patreon.com/adramaofoutlander, or if you want to send a one-time offering, just message me and I will tell you how to do that. And on Wednesday nights, we have the chat on Twitter. It's under hashtag ADoO. It's 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we talk about the prior week's events since we chatted and the podcast, and we go through and discuss. It's a lot of fun. Y'all are brilliant, and I appreciate you so much. And I just want to thank you for coming out week after week. We're about to hit a huge milestone with our 100th episode, and I couldn't do it without you. For me, it's a labor of love, and I would go back and reread these books anyway, because I adore them. And I read lots of other things, and I always come back here. It's where my book heart is, I guess. So we have 4 more episodes after this, and then we're going to go and do a down and dirty of Voyager to get ready for season 3. So until next time, Slán Java.